Kia ora, I'm Chelsea Daniels, and this is The Front Page, a daily podcast presented by the New Zealand Herald. Bees are tiny but mighty players in New Zealand's environment and economy. They pollinate our gardens, native plants and crucial crops, supporting biodiversity and food production across the country. But an invasive threat is looming: the queen yellow-legged hornet. Since June, Biosecurity New Zealand has confirmed several detections of these pests across Auckland. Today on the front page, Mahurangi Honey's Pete Johnston is with us to chat local honey making and why bees are so important. So Pete, can you tell me how crucial are bees to New Zealand's environment and agriculture sector?
Well, it's very important actually because, they're big on pollination. They not only pollinate for the agricultural sector, but they also pollinate native species, which regeneration of native bush, which helps the ecosystems. Yeah, they pollinate 75% of our food that we eat.
I often read things about, if the health of bees is in decline, then we're in big trouble because they're such a huge part of the ecosystem, hey?
Most definitely, yes, most definitely. Yeah.
So what's this hornet that everyone's so worried about at the moment, and why is it such a huge biosecurity risk for New Zealand?
Well, it threatens the bees. They prey on the bees. They'll probably be similar to the German wasp, which we've already been dealing with for quite a while in New Zealand with our bees. They'll go in there and just pretty much annihilate them. They'll eat the bees for protein. They'll eat the honey for carbohydrates. They'll just thrive. Take the German wasp, for example. In the past, that they've come into the New Zealand. They've got no predators. They're very adaptable to the resources around them. We had an apiary up north a little bit. We left them with a couple of boxes of honey on them. They were very strong, 15 hives on that particular site. After harvest, so we're looking at January, and we didn't bother putting our entrance guards on, which sort of gives them a little form of protection. And we came back about a couple of months later, and there was these big German wasps. They'd found them and they're just nailing them. They'd taken out 66% of that apiary, so it's a big problem. Yeah, and not only problem for us, but also for the species in New Zealand. They've got the potential to take out all the vertebrates in New Zealand once they get going. Yeah.
Because I see reports of the queens being found, and there seems to be a specific mention of the queens being in constructing a nest or being in the throes of construction for a nest. How important is it that it doesn't actually solidify, and what happens when they get the nest? Are they making a home for all their millions of buddies, or is the queen pregnant, or what happens there?
Well, from my understanding, once again, they'll be similar to the German wasp. German wasp does, in between March and February, they go into a mating program of their own. They'll mate. They'll make about 1,000 to 2,000 queens, and then those queens will go out and hibernate. They'll be already pregnant, or and they'll have eggs and them ready to go. And after winter, they'll come out, and each queen has the potential to start a new colony. These hornets are pretty much the same. They don't make as many. I think, from my understanding, they make on an average about 300, 350. They can get up to 500 queens through in a season, probably about the same time as the German wasp and the common wasp. And they'll go and hibernate, and then from there it sort of just goes pretty much, you do the maths on it, it's pretty much exponential. So it's really important to nip it in the bud now. The MPI, Department of Conservation, whoever, any government department, they need to really get on board and get whatever resources they can get in there to deal with this critter.
Yeah, well, you mentioned the moth. What else are bees threatened by?
Argentine ants is another problem. They've been around, quite noticeable around pretty much the whole coastline of New Zealand, and they're at a whack with the balance of things here too, and they got the potential to go into a Kānuka tree and get behind a big weta, for example, and just eat it alive. We've seen an area firsthand where, a couple of kilometres that way and a couple of kilometres that way, couple of kilometres that way, where the Argentine ants are just everywhere. It doesn't matter what you pick up, that they're there. The Department of Conservation are aware of the problem, but how to deal with it is a big one. We're really conscious of when we move gear from those sites, that we don't take the ants with us to another site. Those particular sites, we have our bees up on pallets on legs and moats of water or grease on rods of steel, so the ants can't get up and attack the bees, because they will. Once again, they're no different to the wasp or these other critters, these hornets, where they get off on the protein and the carbohydrates from the honey, so they're in full rob mode. The bees are freaking out. Yeah, they pick on the weak hives first, and then as they go through those weak hives, they get stronger, and then it gives them the power, the force to get into the more stronger hives and take them out as well.
How well do you think that the biosecurity system supports local beekeepers in managing those invasive species?
We've had AFB, American foul brood, in the country for a long time, and that's one of the things they're hot on, and they've got quite a good system where they've got a digital system. As a beekeeper or anybody that's got bees, it's by law you have to report if you do get AFB. It's like a bacterium that gets into the hives, and it affects the brood, and by law you've got to report it. Basically dig a hole and put the box of bees in the hole and burn them. And it's as simple as that. It's quite a good system. So they're on board there. They've got quite good resources and tracking for all that sort of thing. They notify the beekeepers within a 5K radius if it's reported. So that particular thing is really good. As far as the varroa mites that have come into the country, there's another example of something coming in that's been a real pain in the butt. That came in 2022, and we're dealing with it. It's very expensive to deal with.
How much does it cost to deal with?
Well, I could imagine like a fairly established size company running maybe 2,000 or 3,000 hives. They'd be looking at probably about $20,000 every 6 months in treatments to deal with it. So the pharmaceutical companies that are providing these goods for it, they're rubbing their hands together. But the old poor old beekeepers, they've really, they can't manage as many hives as what they used to. A matter of fact, we've actually backed off. We're in a small company, and it's just my wife and I. My son helps us, and we've downsized just so we can manage our bees a bit more better and keep them healthy, because things can easily get out of control. For example, if you have a really good honey flow, like we've had in the last couple of years, bee populations pick up from about 5,000 to 10,000 bees up to about 30, 40, even 60,000 bees per hive. And then, say, January, you'll take the honey off, and then the bee population comes down, but the mite population's still there. It's increased with population with those bee populations, and they just smash the bees hard in autumn. They're a real problem. Yeah, real problem.
Is there anything that can be done about them, like to eradicate them completely, or do you just have to live with the consequences of having them there now?
Yeah, that's pretty much it, I think. And, like we've got a lot of young, enthusiastic guys coming through, and we're kind of hoping other countries are working on it as well. New Zealand and Australia's just got it. We get nailed by it quite hard because we have big populations of bees on our honey flows. Yeah, in other countries where it's a bit more cooler, up in Europe, they have a brood break. The queens stop laying, so they don't get them as bad as what we do. I think there are different species of mites, and maybe even different strains. They may. My prediction is they probably more than likely sort of like hybridize. They may, evolve stronger. That way, because we've got other problems coming up in the future, possibly where they become resistant to some of the organic or generic treatments that were thrown at them, e.g. like the ones that we get from the pharmaceuticals to bring the mite levels right down in autumn when there's no honey on there. That's when you treat them and get the mite levels right down, and then they'll slowly come back up again next season with the bee population coming up. One of the problems we face is, like, the last couple of seasons have been really swarm seasons. So if you haven't got control of your apiaries, they'll swarm. I mean, that's a great thing, but if a bee colony goes into a tree, you haven't got the beekeeper caring for it, they'll die out over late autumn, winter, and then we'll treat our bees and they'll be all good, but then they'll go and rob the honey off the bees in the trees or cowshed walls, etc., that are wild, that have gone feral, and bring the mites back, and you'll have reinfestation of these mites. So we've got mites, we've got Argentine ants, we've got German wasp and common wasps. We do not need the Asian hornet wasp, yellow-legged hornet wasp.
No, it sounds like you're dealing with a whole bunch of stuff already, so I can imagine why you guys are worried. What worries you most about the future of beekeeping in New Zealand?
Well, that in particular, I know the beekeepers, and they're really enthusiastic, really innovative, highly motivated, educated, and they've got everything on the line. There's already bee companies going bust at the moment because, with the inflation on running costs, and honey's come down in price a bit. They are struggling. They've got everything on the line, so it's going to make it even more tricky if they've got something else to deal with, like this creature. So we've only got a short window of opportunity to get it, and that's pretty much between now and winter. So MPI, Department of Conservation, they've pretty much got to throw everything at it, even to the point probably where some ideas, I like the idea of where they're putting pamphlets out in the Glenfield area where it's been found, educating people in the Glenfield area need to Google this creature, become familiar with it, it's easy to do. It's pretty distinctive in its appearances. They need to get on board with that and go out there looking for it. The government departments could possibly look at getting private contractors in. There are contractors out there that eradicate rats and weeds and stuff like that. I'm sure people on the ground,
This fall, I gotta say something. You like jazz?
You're talking to humans. You're flying outside the hive.
Barry B. Benson.
So you see soda spilled on a sidewalk and you don't drink it?
Is a little bee.
He's not bothering anybody. Get out of here, you creep.
Discovering a big secret.
How did this get here?
It's just honey, Barry.
This is stealing. Cute bee. Golden Blossom. Ray Liotta Private Select.
It does seem like quite a slippery slope if it does take hold. Can you remember when, I suppose, the first couple of moths were found, or the first couple of those ants were found? How quickly did they take hold?
Well, they did with a moth. I can quite clearly remember the Orion circling Auckland skies, and I don't know what they were spraying around in the skies. I don't know if that's a street that we need to go up. That'd be a major concern, especially spraying over a populated area. I'm sure they'll get a lot of flack from that. That's a big one. That's really needs a lot of thought. But certainly, people on the ground doing surveillance, traps. There's lots of traps they can use out there to try and catch it, and basically looking on northern slopes, warm gullies around that area. If it makes its way out of that area into the bush, she's pretty much over, Red Rover. We won't get it. Yeah, if it's anything like the German wasp.
How can everyday, ordinary New Zealanders try and help? Not only looking out for this wasp, but for bees in general. I mean, I've seen videos of people sprinkling wildflowers in their gardens or something. I mean, does that stuff actually work?
I think so. Yeah, great. That'd be great. Yeah, like borage. Certain herbs, they could look it up. Fruit trees in their backyard, they'll better prosper from the pollination as well. The pollination's off the scale if you've got bees around. Maybe being mindful when they're using herbicides and insecticides. If they decide to use them sparingly. If you can pull out a weed, pull it out. Don't need to spray it. Thistles, for example, you don't need to spray thistles. We used to just grub them with a grub. It's just as quick. Good workout. You don't need to go to the gym if you're doing that sort of stuff. There's lots of things that can be done to help the bees. There's legislation that was brought out years ago that you can personally be liable if you spray plants that are in flower when the honey flow is on and the bee populations are high. So, e.g. like a farm or something like that, spraying gorse when it's fully in flower, those sorts of things really need to be done in the right season at the right time. But there is legislation that they can actually be liable for all costs that the damage is done to an apiary, for example.
If a young person came up to you tomorrow and said, I want a career in beekeeping, it's my lifelong dream, what would you tell them? Would you say, pack it in, go to uni and learn something else? Or would you say, stick with it?
Yeah, no, they really need to, if someone's young and enthusiastic that wants to get into beekeeping, go for it. Yeah, we definitely need more people coming in. There's been a decline in beekeepers, and bee companies have been, with ongoing costs and, these problems that we're having with mites, for example, especially, drop in honey prices. There's definitely been a decline in bee companies have been dropping left, right and centre. There was an increase from about 2019. There was a big increase because it was a bit of a gold rush. Honey prices were good. A lot of people jumped on board. And there's a light at the end of the tunnel. It's a great industry to be in. But even starting off being a hobbyist is the way to go, and get the feel of it. Get some knowledge behind you before you jump in with both feet. You got less to lose that way. A lot can go wrong when you're a beekeeper if you haven't got control. That's for sure.
Thanks for joining us, Pete.
No worries. Hopefully that's helpful information.
That's it for this episode of The Front Page. You can read more about today's stories and extensive news coverage at nzherald.co.nz. The Front Page is produced by Jane Yee and Richard Martin, who is also our editor. I'm Chelsea Daniels. Subscribe to The Front Page on iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcasts, and tune in on Monday for another look behind the headlines.